Hey, welcome back. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about coloring and specifically my thought process when I go about having to color a digital piece. So when I'm looking at this composition that I've created here, the first thing you want to make sure is that you have a clear focal point in your layout. Layout means the way the illustration is drawn. Where does the eye go to? So in this particular composition, I'll just use some arrows to indicate the main form. So this dinosaur is pointing down to this guy who is looking or taking a picture of the dinosaur. We have a lot of leading lines and everything is kind of pointing us, even the tail. And this is all deliberately planned when I was working on the layout for this piece. But we have all these leading lines that are pointing us back to our focal point, which is this guy right here. So if this guy is the focal point, then I want to make sure that the colors also reinforce that focal point. What I mean by that is, let's say I go with a darker palette for everything. Then my main focal point will be the lightest value if I'm surrounded by dark values. Conversely, if this is a daytime scene and everything is very well lit and bright, then I would go ahead and focus on making the character dark. So opposites attract, right? So if you're picking colors, you want to think about the general color scheme. So I'll go ahead and start off by just applying a base red color like so. Now I've already got this character in white, so you can kind of see him stand out. Immediately the eye goes specifically to the character with the phone. And now all the other colors that I choose will support that. So the other thing I also think about when I'm coloring is the further away that you are from the viewer, either the lighter, your colors get progressively lighter as you go back towards the background, or they get progressively darker. It really depends upon what you're trying to emphasize here. Obviously the dinosaur is a very important thing. The trees are not as important. They're there to set the scene. Same with the bushes, etc. And the sky is probably the least important. So what I'm thinking about doing here is I'm going to go ahead and make a relatively light background and just kind of see how things go. Now, as I work on this particular piece, there might be a couple of times where I change my mind, and that's a perfectly normal thing. Here I'm using the magic wand tool. I've covered many videos on coloring techniques, so I really don't want to belabor that point. If you're interested in knowing some of the techniques that I use for coloring, watch some of those videos and that might be helpful. And what I'll do is I'll start from my base layer, Command J. I'll go for a yellowish color. Come back in and fill areas with yellow. I'll just look for any gaps, etc. I'm using Option Delete. That is a good keyboard shortcut on a PC. It's Alt Backspace. If there's only one keyboard shortcut you want to memorize, that would be it. Option Delete is such an often used command in my experience. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll go to the bushes, using the magic wand tool to select that. Command J, Command U. Now notice the bushes are a little bit darker in terms of value. This automatically creates some contrast. Now let's go ahead and focus on the trees. Well, before I do that, let me get the dinosaur, since he's the big guy. if you want a quick way of selecting all of these small areas like so, I'm just going to use the pen tool. So that way I don't have to use the magic wand tool and select every little tiny spike on this dinosaur's back. So I'm creating a path here, and the purpose of this path is I'm going to convert that path into a selection. So I've made an enclosed path. All I want to do is I want to now add to my existing selection. So I'm going to choose add to selection, and now that encompasses that. So I've got everything on the dinosaur for the most part. If I've got any areas that I'm missing, I'll go back and address that. So Command J, Command U. Notice how this dinosaur is darker. So I'm going light in the background and darker in the foreground. That makes the character pop. And then for all of these branches, etc., what I'll do is I'm just going to select everything just using the regular freeform lasso tool. All of these little bits. Command J, Command U. Desaturate it. Now I don't want the value of this brown to be very equal to the value of the dinosaur, so I'm going to go with that. And I talk about value. There's a way that you can do a grayscale test, and I've got a video on that. How do you do a grayscale test to check your values? And you should watch that. I'll go ahead and try to put a link to it in the description here. But the idea is I'm going from light to medium to dark. Now I can still tweak the lightness here, something like that. And that's how I know that I'm starting to move towards an area where it's gonna, all these colors are gonna work together in harmony. All right. Of course, there's areas back here that, you know, I didn't apply any color to. And for this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and focus on base colors so you can get an idea. But really, with the character highlighted in white here, you can see that the eye goes to that. So we've got layout, and we've got now color reinforcing that. So now I can take this red. Let's just deal with this stuff right here. Command J, Command U. See that dark green makes the character stand out. And of course there's some areas and gaps that I'm missing, so I'll use my eyedropper tool. Let's just get rid of some of these extra marks here. And so now the character pops, and now I can change the red. And there we go. So these are just my color flats here, but you can see how color is now pulling the viewer to the focal point. So you want to establish what the focal point is in your layout. Where do you want the viewer to look? And then use leading lines and use other compositional techniques to get the viewer to the focal point. Once you have that, then consider whether or not it's a daytime scene or a nighttime scene, or what kind of mood you're trying to create with your colors. And you know, if you've got a relatively dark environment or using a lot of dark values, then you want your focal point to be light. If you've got a lot of light values, then you want your focal point to be dark. So that's how I approach coloring. Hopefully you found this video to be useful. You'll probably see the finished result of this in the thumbnail for this video. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please let me know, and I'll be more than happy to address that in a future video. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.